So welcome everybody to our third RePS guest seminar, and we are absolutely delighted to welcome Martine Mussies. Is that how you say it, Martine? Mussies?
Correct.
Yeah. And Martine, she's an artistic researcher and also an autistic academic. And at the moment, she's working on her PhD at Maastricht, I'm not sure, University, Maastricht University, and that's in Holland. Alongside her research, Martine is also a musician and she practices martial arts. And in the abstract and bio that I sent out on Friday last week to everyone, you'll notice there's a little link. You can find her first monograph in there and some more information about her work. And her study today, as you can see on the slide, is all about budoka. I think that's how you say it, in times of COVID. And it's a study on the impact of lockdowns on budoka training. And Martine was just sharing informally that she's looking to publish out of this research. So we're really excited to have you here, Martine. And I know I've had several apologies. And yes, just go for it. We are your enthusiastic audience, and I'm sure there will be lots of others who will come in and watch the recording. Good luck. Break a leg, as we say in show business.
Well, thank you, Rachel, for your very kind introduction. First, I would like to read the abstracts of this paper presentation, just to remind people of what it is about. The COVID-19 lockdowns significantly affected the training practices of individuals practicing Japanese martial arts, known as budoka. So the martial arts are budo, and people practicing them are budoka. While prior research has examined alternative training methods in sports and in professional performing arts, like dancing, there's a lack of literature on the impact of lockdowns on budo training. This study assesses this gap through a mixed methods approach, combining qualitative and quantitative research methods and incorporating artistic research elements. The goal is to explore the diverse dimensions of lockdown training that extend beyond the physical exercises. This research aimed to provide a comprehensive understanding of how the pandemic and associated restrictions have influenced the training practices of budoka. And now I would like to, yeah, it works. So this is our little program for the next 20 minutes. So I will start with the introduction and some background of this idea and the study. The COVID-19 pandemic brought unprecedented challenges to every aspect of our lives, fundamentally altering the way we live, work, and interact with one another. Within the martial arts communities, the lockdown imposed to curb the spread of the virus disrupted the traditional training practices of budoka, practitioners of Japanese martial arts. As a budoka myself, I found the impact of these lockdowns on our training to be a compelling subject for exploration. The study presented seeks to delve into the experiences of budoka during this extraordinary period. Designed as a mixed method, combining qualitative and quantitative research methodologies, it aims to provide a comprehensive understanding of how budoka adapted their training routines amidst the lockdowns. But this research is aimed to be more than a scholarly investigation. It's an exploration within the realms of budo itself. Beyond the academic pursuits, this research carries practical implications for individual budoka and dojo. By sharing the findings through more accessible publications, the research aims to foster a culture of knowledge exchange within the martial arts communities. In times of future challenges, these shared insights can equip budoka with a broader toolkit to navigate uncertainties and disruptions. During the pandemic temporalities, I embarked on a documentation initiative centered on the exploration of the practice methodologies of my fellow budoka and myself. This endeavor encompassed various activities, including curating videos of the planking challenge initiated by my Iaido sensei, David Smits. And additionally, I diligently recorded and compiled notes from instructional videos shared by our instructors and fellow practitioners via groups on Facebook and WhatsApp. These interactions were facilitated through platforms such as the Japan Fans app group, a social medium as, here quote, a form of digital body where individuals must write themselves into being, that's Boyd 2007, end quote. And notably, highly respected sensei like Franz Bacher sensei contributed to this repository by disseminating videos containing karate exercises suitable for outdoor and individual practices. These instructional resources were made accessible through his own dojo's website, Shuken Mashi, as well as on Facebook and other social medias and the Japan Fans website. With the broader online communities of Japan Fans on Facebook, a diverse array of practice videos were exchanged, extending beyond the domain of Budo to encompass other martial arts like Shodo, Japanese calligraphy, as well as various sports and related disciplines such as Pilates and yoga. Moreover, Yolanda Meijers, a fifth dan Iaidoka and trained physiotherapist, facilitated online trainings in high-intensity interval training, or HIIT. The multitude of virtual engagement prompted compelling inquiries. Are intrinsic survival instincts intertwined with the need to practice? What propels our commitment to practice? And furthermore, how is our overall well-being interconnected with this intrinsic drive to practice? These thought-provoking inquiries motivated me to undertake a comprehensive investigation aiming to unearth valuable insights into the tendency and well-being of the human spirit amidst the complexities of a rapidly evolving world. This exploration involved an ongoing examination of how budoka adapt, evolve, and persist in their pursuits in the face of adversity. Consequently, I formulated a tailored questionnaire designed for budoka, which was subsequently disseminated across social media platforms, the Japan Fans website, and Zanshin, which is the journal of the Dutch Kendo Federation. In retrospect, I can see how this documentation is part of an ongoing artistic research project that originated in 2018 with my essay entitled On My Way. It is an auti ethnography, so an autistic ethnography, about my personal journey and an exploration of the interconnected disciplines of karate and music and musicology. During the lead up to the lockdown, throughout the lockdown period, and in retrospect, I authored several essays about the connections between Budo and artistic research through an autistic lens, emphasizing the significance of practice. Among other, I described how I feel this demand for immersive practice, introspection, and a fearless exploration of one's own shi, a Japanese concept related to your heart and soul that I have often interpreted as my/self. Published in outlets such as Zanshin, the Journal of the Dutch Kendo Federation, Kendo Jidai International, and Key-S Perspectives, which is the website of Budo scholar Dr. Kate Sylvester. These publications provided the platform for sharing personal reflections on the pandemic's impact on my Budo practice and exploring the broader implications of the discipline. As I felt compelled to extend this exploration beyond my own experiences, I invited fellow budoka to share their reflections, stories, and insights, thus creating a collective narrative that reflects the diverse range of responses to these unprecedented challenges. Through this communal endeavor, the research endeavors to shed light on the broader impact of the pandemic on the martial arts communities. Beyond its martial aspects, I have long regarded Budo as a philosophy and a way of life in constant evolution. By collecting and combining our lived experiences, I aim to underscore the resilience and adaptability that Budo practices can offer, not only during the pandemic, but also in the face of other life challenges. Budo, the way of the martial arts, and artistic research may, at first glance, appear unrelated. However, as a practitioner of both, I've come to realize the surprising parallels between the two. Both budo and artistic research demand self-critique, urging us to delve deep into our desires and fears, shaping our characters and artistic identities. Both paths offer opportunities for personal growth, enabling us to become better individuals, both on and off the mat or stage. Moreover, these practices of self-discovery and development have the remarkable ability to force connections across diverse neurotypes and backgrounds. Budo and artistic research create a shared space where individuals from various walks of life can come together, united by a common pursuit of growth and understanding. In this sense, the research is not merely about budo and artistic research, it is an exploration of the transformative power of these practices in our lives. My research thus aims to gain a comprehensive understanding of how budoka adapted their training routines during lockdown periods, identifying challenges faced and opportunities that arose. By employing a mixed method approach, this study seeks to combine qualitative data on changes in training frequency, intensity, and duration with qualitative insights into the physical, mental, and emotional well-being of budoka during the lockdowns. Additionally, the research will explore the emergence of innovative training methods and practices within the martial arts communities. So, a quick overview of the answers to the survey, backgrounds of the respondents. So in total, there were 288 people that filled in my survey. The majority identified as male, that's 78%. 15%, only 15% reported to be female. There was 1% non-binary, and there was 0.8% trans. 3% announced that they preferred not to disclose their gender. The age distribution, the majority was aged between 25 and 40, that's around 37%, closely followed by the group aged 40 till 50, that's 32%. Then they're in the 50-65 age group, that's 50%, 15%. Youngsters 18 till 25 are 8%, and 65 and above are 6%. There's only 1% of participants under the age of 10, so really kids. The majority is from the Netherlands of my respondents, and that's actually not a surprise because it was advertised in this Dutch Kendo Federation outlet. So I think that most of the respondents saw it through there. And this is also reflected in the main budo disciplines. It's Kendo and Karate. Well, those are my disciplines as well. So I think that my surroundings filled it in. But there were also significant representations from Japan, Germany, USA, and other countries in Europe. So Kendo and Karate were most prevalent, but there was also almost 10% Aikido. There was 8.4% Iaido, so sword fighting. There was Kyudo, bow. There was Kobudo, which I also practice myself, which is like karate with weapons. There was Judo, but not that much. There's only 3% people that filled in the survey that did Judo. There was Hapkido, which is actually not a real budo, I think, but someone did apparently 1%, so not that many people did Hapkido and decided to fill in the survey. And there was Jodo, which is also a bit more over 1%. Years of practice distribution. There was a balanced spread across experience spectrum, strong presence of mid-level practitioners. Mid-level I defined as 6 to 15 years. There was a dedicated long-term practitioners, 20 plus years. And the highest achieved grades mentioned They ranged from 4th to 8th Dan. 8th Dan is like super high grade. You are a grandmaster. So I wonder whether people have been totally honest or maybe a bit ignorant. So if you're 8Q, you think, oh yeah, I have a grade. What was it again? I think it was 8. Let's fill in 8 Dan. So we have to be careful. And there's a notable presence of 6 dans as well. And well, 6 is already rather high. It might be the case, it might be true, and I would be really honored if 6 down since I had filled it in, but maybe there's some misunderstanding there as well. Yeah, that's actually the limitations of an anonymous survey. So we have to acknowledge the potential inaccuracies in reported data, especially regarding the higher ranks that I mentioned. And I have to be careful in interpreting reported rank distribution due to this potential error or misrepresentation. So the COVID-19 pandemic had transformative effects on budo practice, leading to changes in practitioners' perception of training quality before, during, and after the lockdowns. Practitioners rated their main budo practice on a scale from 1 to 10 across the periods, revealing a decline in practice quality during the lockdowns. However, ratings rebounded after the lockdowns, suggesting the resilience of the budo community. The drastic drop in ratings during the lockdowns highlighted the challenges and limitations of practicing budo remotely. The rebound in ratings after the lockdown signifies the importance of physical interaction and the overall dojo experience. Activities undertaken outside regular practice before the pandemic revealed a diverse range of initiatives aimed at enhancing physical fitness, mental well-being, and understanding of budo principles. Many participants engaged in activities such as running, swimming, cycling, and weightlifting to maintain physical condition and overall health. The study revealed that participants demonstrated a willingness to integrate different physical disciplines, such as yoga, into their budo routines, indicating adaptability and the pursuit of holistic well-being. Beyond physical practice, respondents showed an interest in deepening their knowledge of budo through self-directed reading, reflecting their intrinsic motivation. Despite the post-COVID-19 lockdown period, practitioners remain dedicated to maintaining their engagement with physical activities and budo training, showcasing resilience and resourcefulness. The reintegration of budo into daily life was evident, complemented by continued engagement in general physical activities. Online resources, such as virtual lessons and gatherings, played a role in maintaining community and continuity, while self-directed learning through reading and studying remained important, emphasizing the intellectual aspect of budo. The findings highlight the holistic nature of budo training and practitioners' commitment to both physical and intellectual development. So the impact on physical, mental, and emotional well-being of budoka. The COVID-19 pandemic significantly impacted the well-being, leading to disruptions in traditional training practices. However, innovative training approaches emerged, with digital technologies playing a transformative role in maintaining connections and well-being within budo communities. Practitioners utilize platforms such as WhatsApp and Facebook to continue training and foster closeness, engaging in activities like the planking challenge and shared exercise videos. Digital platforms also facilitated the sharing of practice videos beyond budo, including activities like shodo, pilates, and yoga, transcending geographical boundaries and temporal constraints. The shift toward digital life worlds reflects a departure from traditional perceptions of digital encounters as a distal, fostering a sense of shared contemporaneity and offering a platform for communal pursuit of well-being within the budo community. During the lockdown, the budo community experienced a mix of advantages and challenges with online and outdoor training. Online training allowed for the continuation of routines and motivation, but lacked detailed feedback from instructors and limited physical interaction. Practicing in open spaces presented opportunities for physical and mental fortitude, human connection, and a sense of community. However, it also brought weather dependency, constraints related to public spaces, and challenges for specific techniques. Both online and outdoor training revealed the need for adaptation and innovation, as well as emotional and psychological impacts. The study also highlighted differences in experiences between disciplines, such as kendo and kyudo. Kendo is the way of the sword, so it's like Japanese fencing, and kyudo is the way of the bow, so it's like Japanese archery. And those two have very different challenges, I can imagine. The preliminary findings of the research, evidenced by the distinct challenges faced by practitioners of karate and kung fu during the lockdown, suggesting that each discipline's response to transition was unique. This was actually a surprise to me because one of my friends is a kung fu, or sifu you say, so he's a teacher in kung fu. And he told me that his students were did not feel that much pressure or were not that much challenged to go to outdoor trainings, while online practices they found very annoying. And my karate friends had the opposite. And then we digged a bit deeper. And then it turned out that it was mostly due to their footwear, because Kung Fu people use shoes. So they can train outside very easily with their shoes on. Karate people normally don't use shoes, and our stances are not made to do in trainers or sneakers, or how do you call them? So outdoor training was, for kata and stylistic forms in karate, was really a difficult thing to do. And online training, as long as you had a space, it was really easy to do. And for Kung Fu, this was exactly the other way around. So that was one of the major insights for me personally. And then we arrive at the conclusions. This paper has discussed the impact of lockdown on budo practice during the COVID-19 pandemic. It emphasized how practitioners adapted and found innovative ways to sustain their engagement with budo training. It reflects on the experiences of the budo community during lockdown, expressing gratitude for the opportunity to learn from others. The paper aims to delve into the research methodology, collective findings, and implications for the future, highlighting the varied impact of the pandemic on individuals based on their backgrounds and the stage of the pandemic they experienced. Many budoka demonstrated resilience and adaptability, using physical activities, creative practices, spiritual or philosophical methods, and virtual platforms to cope with the challenges. The research demonstrated that practicing, in a broader sense, played a vital role in budoka's life during the pandemic, serving as a mechanism for survival and self-reflection. And here are some more of the results. Traditional methodologies often emphasize technical aspects, historical context, and physiological effects in martial arts studies. And this artistic research introduced a novel perspective as it captured the emotional, creative, and expressive facets of budoka. And the same goes for the narrative. Lockdown narratives offer insights into practitioners' mental resilience. And the research thus unveils the dynamic fusion of the martial arts and the artistic, which can be challenging to conventional notions of budo. So I hope that this diverse dimension adds something new to the existing corpus of literature in terms of emotional depth, personal interpretations, and shared experiences to the narrative. And I think that it is interesting for future practice to see how this transformed mundane settings into training grounds by employing objects creatively as substitutes for traditional equipment. So these are the digital transformations. Virtual adaptation global access and inclusivity, the enrichment of training experience, artistic elements, and multimedia collaboration. I separated those 5 for this presentation, but in my paper, I will hopefully show that they are very much intertwined. For example, if you do karate through a VR set, then you have this multimedia collaboration. When you take a picture of yourself doing it, you have an artistic element. It enriches your training experiences because you can see the dojo instead of just practicing at home alone. You have global access and inclusivity if you download a lesson from a teacher, let's say in Japan or the States. And the virtual adaptation is actually something that we're just discovering in Budo, how we can implement more, let's say, virtuality into our daily practices, which can also be helpful in other situations. For example, if you are on a holiday and you want to continue your practice. So in conclusion, this research illuminated the profound impact of the pandemic on Budo practices, showcasing practitioners' adaptability and innovation. The blend of quantitative data, qualitative insights, and artistic research uncovered nuanced shifts in training experiences. Artistic expression emerged as a powerful coping tool, and the transformative role of digital technologies highlighted the resilience of the martial arts community. That is my sensei and me, we extend gratitude to participants, enriching our understanding of Budo in a post-lockdown world. And that's it.
Fabulous. Well done. I'm just going to give you a little clap there. Because there's only one member in the audience. It's got to be a very loud clap, Martine. Brilliant. I loved it. You were really good at explaining. I can see you're so immersed in all of this that for you it just trips off the tongue. You know, it's your lived experience, not only as a practitioner but also as a researcher, and that's a beautiful synergy that you know, particularly the RePS group, we're investigating, we're trying to get, you know, the practitioners' voices out there more, because we have a lot of academics talking about stuff but not so much pracademics, you know, people who practice things and do the academics as well. So that's sort of immediately that hit me hard straight away. It was like your utter lived experience of all of this, but also across quite a long time, because of the fact that the pandemic was so disruptive.
Yeah.
And I have worked a little bit with a karate club in Wagga Wagga, which is sort of about a 2-hour drive from here, and I've done some work with them on fundamental movement skills, and I know how much it disrupted them.
Yeah.
And how they had to move all of their classes online and the effects of that. But what kind of really stood out to me with your practice is that it's not all negative, you know, because what you've done is actually show this incredible, I mean, you used the term resilience a few times, and you've actually shown how you have, you know, made the most of the bad situation, and that new discoveries, new ways of learning and teaching have emerged. And so that's like really exciting, because there was so much negative stuff coming out about moving practical subjects online, particularly. I mean, you know, at my university we do a lot of online subjects anyway, but transferring dance and drama and music and all of those things online, when you'd normally be doing it in a collaborative class, physically embodied work, etc., very, very problematic. But even with your study, you've got an interesting take on it, that actually there was new and innovative stuff that came out
Yeah.
So I kind of made a few notes as you were talking. And as I'm the only one here, I'm allowed to talk and and ask you a couple of questions because you know your work so well. So you actually said something really profound at the very start, which was that there was a lack of research
Yeah.
on the impact of lockdowns on budoka, budoka or budo, as you call it. Well, that is profound in the sense that you're presenting this original framing of your practice. And I think that the COVID effects generally have been dismissed, and or humans are remarkably resilient as a population, but there's not much research out there, and trust me, I've looked, on the COVID effects on practice. And I think that what you've done here is really highlight how that's an emerging area for research for all of us, not just in your specialist field, but actually, what was the effect on physical education, on dance, on gymnastics, and all the other disciplines. Have you got any thoughts on that? What have you noticed going on in other disciplines at all?
Well, one of the things that triggered me to start recording and collecting everything that came out of the judo community were these small YouTube clips shared by, I think it's New York City Ballet, but in any case, it's a famous ballet. And they were of the dancers practicing at home. And then you will see them in the kitchen using their kitchen table as a bar to lift the leg and do a dance. And yeah, and it was funny in a strange way because it seemed so out of context, but it was also worrying because how are these people continuing their professionalism, their level? Can they train in the limited spaces of their homes? And I thought, yeah, well, actually, we have the same in karate, that many things you can do on your own. I mean, even this morning, I did some planking, I did some other exercises, I read some notes. You can do many things, but you cannot do everything. And also, you need your teacher and you need your peers. And how can you cope with the missing of them on various levels? So in support, so emotionally, but also methodologically, but also in terms of feedback, because I did some classes over Zoom. And with really interesting sensei, but it was mostly them talking. It was more a lecture or a lesson than it was a training, because they could not, they have like 100 little screens with people. They cannot see whether my ankle is bent or not. No. So they're just they're like this loudspeaker that's only sending, and that can be very interesting and very rewarding. And I really learned a lot that I would not have learned if there had not been any lockdown due to a pandemic. But at the same time,
Really, sorry, that's really interesting what you just said, because that was my next question, and you've kind of led into it beautifully. Did it become more didactic in terms of the teaching? Because it sounds as though it did in Budo, but when I look more broadly at what went on in physical education, what I saw being churned out on YouTube and so on was basically fitness training instead of PE, and it became more didactic and more militarized, and there was much more this kind of very much instructor-led practice, which was majorly concerning for me and for many other people in the PE profession, because we've fought off that militarized way of doing things in PE for decades. And so suddenly COVID comes, the crisis happens, and it all goes online. And I mean, in England it was even worse, because we had Joe Wicks, who you probably don't know, but he became worshipped as this he called himself, what he did was PE with Joe. Well, it wasn't PE, it was fitness training. And so, you know, we were all like up in arms and saying, this isn't PE, you know, this is so it's interesting. We've got parallels there in terms of yours went a little bit leaning towards more sort of didactic tendencies, pedagogies. We had very similar things going on in PE as well, but nobody is really doing major research on that, whether it's because it's not interesting, whether it's because they're saying, oh, well, that was 2 years ago. But
let's get it over with. It was awful. Let's forget it.
Trauma, you know, trauma. And, but actually that needs to be unpacked in terms of, okay, well, what is the recovery now? And I think that that's what you were talking to, which I really enjoyed. You give this impression of a timeline of, you know, pre-COVID, during COVID, post-COVID. And that's a really beautiful sense of this timeline that you just gave, you know, in half an hour. You presented this, and you're offering issues plus solutions plus, you know, where to next, you know, the so what that we always ask for in research. Plenty of opportunities, I think, for reps people, if they're listening, to kind of consider their own practice and go, well, hang on a minute, is that worth writing something about? Well, I would say yes, it is, because this could be a stimulus for you to write some form of reflection on how your PE or sport or discipline teaching in a practical subject was adversely and positively affected. And this kind of could be your stimulus, your starting point for it.
Yeah, and I think that it also really mirrors the culture you live in. And for me, as a Dutch person living in the Netherlands, we have this daily television show. It's called Nederland in Beweging. So the Netherlands is moving, or so, some sort of title. And it's a bit like Jane Fonda. It's like fitness training. It's mostly for people from the age of 50 up. Actually, it's aimed at them. And then they go do all the silly dances and things, and to stretch and to go down and do some exercise. It is really low intensity, but many people do it, and everyone surely knows it. So we make jokes about this and stuff because it's such a well-known TV show. And building on that, it is really easy, I think, for teachers in this culture to say, oh, well, I can do Nederland in Beweging, but with some more punching involved or so. And then it's just a small step up. And also because Japanese martial arts were highly influenced by Western military techniques in training. Leading up to the Second World War, when it was in Japan, really, there was karate training for the battlefield. It was not like a Zen Buddhistic practice or so. It was to fight, and that's also why we have the low stances, because we had to fight judoka, for example.
Fascinating.
So there's a whole interconnected culture there that we are used to. Ich, ni, san, shi, and do the movements in a really militaristic style, which is not that's really associated with Japan nowadays, but it's not traditionally Japanese. Like 100 years ago, it was more like Chinese kung fu practice. So everyone was doing the movements in his or own time and space. But because we already, as a discipline, went through this development of being in time, so that the teacher could correct everyone. So each, and you do the movement, and then you stand still and teacher correct. And then knee, and you do the next movement. So that's not how one would perform a kata in a competition, for example, but that's always the way we train. And
that's really interesting again, because like it shows how my research looks into the body and how the body is governed and regulated through physical education and sport and so on. And I use a Foucauldian framing for that, you know, the effects of power on the body. And what you've just described there is quite fascinating, because it kind of throws out the myth of a particular sport or activity maintaining its authenticity and not changing across time. It actually just throws that out, which is just so good, because, you know, people are like, oh, is it authentic this, or is it authentic? No, because actually, you know, everything is influenced on some kind of socio-cultural level. Even physical education as a subject has been majorly influenced across time. And it's only when you start digging into the archives of old books, photographs, we don't have so many videos, but, you know, when you look at that and the effect of that on the body and how it was regulated and so on, but also then how that has changed into this more free flow, where the body's actually liberated, in modern physical education, particularly in the artistic, you know, areas such as dance and expressive gymnastics, creative gymnastics, and so on. But yeah, that's fascinating. So I also picked up about you kind of touched on this notion of human flourishing, really. You talked about the holistic notions around the practices, and you mentioned physical, mental, and emotional, and this notion of well-being being holistic. And my own research at the moment is I'm doing a project here in Australia. It's looking at embodied well-being, because what we've got going on in Australia right now is we've got a lot of psychologists and a psychological framing of well-being going on, and I found that really irritating. And so what I've done is start to build a team of researchers, and we're actually looking at creating these whole constructs of well-being, moving it towards what you were describing in your seminar, which is, you know, this more holistic notion of well-being. You talked about heart, you talked about soul, and you also connected with that. You also, I do a lot of yoga myself, but you mentioned yoga and how that became a kind of a partial kind of strand that zoomed away online and became a possibility for practice online, and that was quite a positive thing that came out. Like, it created variety and diversity within the practice. So do you feel like when it went off into yoga and so on, do you feel like that watered down the practice? Or in your results, how are you going to sort of discuss that in terms of authenticity, watering down, all of those kinds of things?
Personally, I do not like the phrase watering down, because I think it's really important as a researcher, as an artist, as a martial artist, to broaden your horizon and to try things out and keep the best, to keep it in biblical times. And in karate, traditionally, there's this notion of being in harmony, being in your natural state. So that's also maybe you can see the yin yang idea. That's super important in Eastern philosophy. And then you need you have 3 pointers that are, of course, also related to chakras. And the idea is that you have a sharp mind, a good heart, and a lot of energy. So I'm touching my belly now. So there's a lot of energy in hara, it is called. So that's your stomach, your gut, maybe your gut feeling. So that's what you need. And only if you have that, you can be like a good karateka. And that's also what attracts many people to Budo, and I can imagine also to yoga, is that you can keep growing in this discipline for the rest of your life. I mean, there are grandmasters that are age 90 or so. You cannot be a professional fencer anymore. You cannot beat someone at a competition if you're over the age of now, let's say 30 or so, because you will become slower and your muscles
Yes, of
are not
course.
that explosive
Yeah.
anymore. And so that's the thing. And for dancers, it's obviously related that, I mean, you can do folkloristic dances and so you can do all sorts of dances, of course. But if we are talking traditional ballet practice, I think the age of 30 is when you start thinking about retirement and maybe becoming a teacher. And so, and that's the
Apart
case.
from Margot Fontaine, who went right up until she was in her 60s, late 60s. And
Wow. Yeah,
yeah,
but she is the big
she
exception there, right?
yeah, they
Yeah.
are the absolute minority. So what she did with Rudolf Nureyev when they partnered together, I think he was 30 odd years younger than her, but you know, the way that they choreographed their ballet sequences was around like compensating for her aging process in the body, and so he
Yeah.
would do different things, he would support her differently and so on. So yeah, but they are a minority. The majority of ballet dancers is really beyond 35. It's really tough to keep up that discipline.
Yeah. Yeah, and in karate, it's different. I mean, you can keep growing, and also especially in karate, not that much in Iaido and Kendo, I think, but in karate there is also a large presence of disability. I'm not really sure about the phrasing of this, but people that are not that good in learning, or people that have, for
Learning
example, one leg,
disabilities.
or
Yeah.
in Dutch, I know how to politically phrase these
In
terms.
Australia, we would just say they have learning disabilities.
Okay. Well, I
Yeah.
think that they just learn in a different way, but then that's also complicated to say.
And we
Anyway,
use your term neurodivergent as
yeah,
well. So that was something else that perhaps we could finish with that,
yeah,
which was about the journey of self-discovery that you talked about, and how you yourself as an autistic academic, you're obviously going through all of that as well. But you mentioned about how there was, I love this expression you used, on and off the mat, that there was this notion of self-discovery. And I
yeah,
thought, wow, that is such a beautiful way of connecting life with our practice and the need for practice. Because I know, as an an ex-athlete, dancer, etc., I have to do some form of physical practice every day, even if it's just stretching, just a walk. My body goes if I don't
yeah,
do that. And so for me, there's a lot of research around exercising across the lifespan, and they talk about how people absorb this identity as being an exerciser, and that
yeah,
when people have this identity of being an exerciser, then they have this lifelong trajectory, and they shift from all different activities,
yeah.
adapting with age, etc., etc. And so you kind of you reinforced that for me when you were talking about on and off the mat. It was like, she's got the identity of an exerciser in this particular form, and it feeds into her everyday life.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be something really nice to finish up. Who inspired you to do this, and how you perceive your future with it all.
Well, my sensei inspired me, of course, a lot. So I'm really grateful to all the sensei that have helped me in the past and continue to help me throughout the course of this, what we call it, do, so this way, this path. And I think this also taps in what we were discussing in the last question about disability, because it's not that I think I am disabled, but I often feel like society is disabling me. And I
Yes.
don't feel that in my karate because I do not have to compare myself with anyone else. I only compare myself to myself of yesterday or last week or last year. And
Yes.
I see that I have grown. Of course, it's always like this, but there is growth and there's progress and it makes me feel better. But there's also a downside that I'm getting more and more aware of, and that is that, especially in Iaido contexts, people are like, well, we as Iaidoka, we should be the best people, and we should be this, and we should be that. And that's, of course, noble to aim to be the best version of yourself and like that. But the jargon can sometimes, to my feeling, be a bit othering and exclusive, like, oh, we are better people than other people just because we do Iaido. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think that practicing a martial art, especially a martial art like the Japanese Budo, can really help you to reflect on yourself and to stimulate your inner growth and to deal with stress, for example, because when I train that people are trying to strangle me, then when someone on the train is nasty towards me, well, it's not that stressful because, I mean, I was strangled like yesterday, so I can cope with this as well. So it puts things into perspective as well, and it's really helpful. Yeah, but it's also a mirror. Like you talked about stretching. We do a lot of stretching as well, of course, but not really to become flexible, but more to see, well, what's the state of my body at
That's
this
what
moment?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
what
it's
can I,
like
yeah,
mindful
so yeah.
mindful stretching, mindful movement, and just tuning into the body and
Yeah,
noticing where the knots are, noticing
yeah.
where, where there's like just before Christmas, I sprained an ankle really badly in a pothole, and so now I'm noticing that in my own daily practice, like there's a tightness around that ankle line, and I'm just gently working with it, strengthening it and
Yeah,
making it better. And so when
yeah,
you have like a small injury, I mean, it did hurt at the time, but when you have a small injury or any old war wound, from previous practice, that you've picked up, because we're athletes, we sense that
yeah,
in our body. And I check in every day and I go, oh, okay, that's a little bit loose, or that's a bit tight, or and that it's not a goal to stretch. It's like what my body needs, as
yeah,
opposed to I'm going to stretch for 15 minutes and work through the whole body.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
thank you so much. I mean, I've been really spoiled because I've had a private conversation with you and had the absolute joy of working through your entire presentation, asking as many questions and making as many comments as I like. And that rarely happens, because normally there's a group in my university. There's always a big group with lots of questions. But anyway, thank you so much, Martine. I'm going
Thank
to
you.
stop the recording here, and then we'll just have a little chat afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's still screen sharing, but I'm not sure about